Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the Growth, Infrastructure and Waste Committee, the 8th for 2023. Today is the 5th of September 2023. I see that all councillors are in attendance, so good morning to you all. And I have no apologies. I now move on to the acknowledgement of country. And Ipswich City Council respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners as custodians of the land and waters we share. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging as the keepers of the traditions, customs, cultures and stories of proud people. I now move on to declarations of interest in matters of the agenda. Are there any declarations of interest?
Thanks, Mayor. In accordance with Section 150 EQ of the Local Government Act, I, Councillor Fechner, inform the meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in item number 7, which is the late report here, titled Development Application Recommendation for minor change. The nature of my conflict are my business interests in both A1A Proprietary Limited and by Heisenberg Proprietary Limited, both located in the top of town in Ipswich. I plan on dealing with the conflict by leaving the room while the matter is discussed and voted on.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fechner. Councillor Madsen.
In accordance with Section 150 EQ of the Local Government Act 2009, I, Councillor Jacob Madsen, inform the meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in item 7, Development Application Recommendation Minor Change. The nature of the declarable conflict of interest is I'm on the executive of the Ipswich Trades Hall and Labor Day Committee, and our building, the Ipswich Trades Hall, is in the adjacent area.
Thank you very much. Councillor Madsen.
As a result of my conflict of interest, I'll leave the meeting room while the matter is considered and voted on.
Thank you, Councillor Madsen. Any other declarations? No? Thank you very much. So move on to item 1, which is business outstanding, which is an overview of Council's approach to heritage. Does anyone have any questions of the relevant council officer on this report? No, in that case, I'll move that the report titled Overview of Council's Approach to Heritage 2023 be received and contents noted. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Doyle. In speaking to this, I'm really pleased to see this report come to us this morning. I think it will create a solid base for us for the preparation of the Ipswich Heritage Plan. With a rapidly growing population alongside the emergence of new suburbs, it is important to recognise, celebrate and reflect on our past and to record our community now and for future generations. We know our heritage sets us apart here in Ipswich. We have retained many heritage buildings, such as the Commonwealth Hotel, which Council restored to preserve its heritage character and is now extending it into a contemporary state-of-the-art dining and entertainment hub. Our heritage program leads the state with many initiatives and firsts, including Picture Ipswich, which is a publicly available and free local history database which holds images, research and rich oral histories. I would like to recognise the historical groups in our community, organisations and volunteers that play a key role in managing collections, raising awareness and promoting the cultural heritage of Ipswich. I think this report provides a snapshot of heritage projects that Council has undertaken and also looks at how we can enhance our collaboration to advance and retain our heritage as a priority for this Council and the City. And I say this during our galvanised Heritage Festival at the moment that is still continuing since last week and will continue till Sunday. And I also note we have a few other heritage notice of motions that are coming through to Council as well that I think will complement this snapshot of the many heritage activities in our Council. I know, Councillor Doyle, you have a notice of motion from September last year calling for an updated heritage study to assist with the new planning scheme, and Councillor Johnick recently did a notice of motion in relation to heritage trails. So I think this has been a great snapshot into the many activities that the Council does. I wouldn't mind if the organisation could add a couple of things. I see on page 18, theme 2, protection and conservation. I thought it would be great to include the work that we've done on the Commonwealth Hotel and Bottle Alley in that particular area. And under theme 3, collaboration and communication, I think the work that we're doing with Uni SQ on the digital twin project and the Ipswich Art Gallery would be another great item to include in there as well. But I'll open up for any other discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. I, agree with, all of the important work that you've just outlined, but I just wanted to highlight the one thing that I'm really wanting to see out of this, and it's great that it's mentioned, and that's our our own heritage management plans for our own assets. It's important that we lead by example. So we continue to, manage those assets in accordance with what community expectations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Doyle. Any other discussion? I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's everyone except Councillor Madsen. Those against? Councillor Madsen. So the motion is carried. Move on to item 2, which is the confirmation of minutes. And the recommendation, are there any queries on that? The recommendation is that minutes of the Growth, Infrastructure and Waste Committee held on the 10th of August 2023 be confirmed. I will move that. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Fechner. Any queries or... I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's everyone except for Councillor Madsen. Those against? Those abstaining? Thank you, Councillor Madsen abstained, and the matter has carried. Item 3, which is the temporary local planning instrument of the first 2023 Resource Recovery and Waste Activity Regulation, and this is a matter that's being looked at under delegation. May I ask the relevant council officer to come to the lectern, please?
Good morning, Brett Davey, General Manager, Planning and Regulatory Services.
Thank you, Mr Davey. Could you please outline while we're looking at extending this, noting the view of this council is to have much better outcomes for our community. Do you mind outlining why this is being proposed to be extended?
Of course. So a temporary local planning instrument has the effect of suspending parts of a planning scheme and introducing new regulation. And so for several years, we've had various iterations of temporary local planning instrument to cover waste issues in accordance with the Waste Directive. The current temporary local planning instrument ceases to have effect from December. And in order to maintain continued coverage, we do need to extend it. So you can't necessarily just extend a temporary local planning instrument, you need to introduce a new one. So the aim of this is to introduce a new temporary local planning instrument to maintain regulatory coverage.
What would happen if the council decided to refuse this today? What are some of the impacts?
If the council
Pros
decided
and cons, I guess.
Yeah, the pros and cons. So the temporary local planning instrument has additional controls for Swanbank and Surrounds and Girapilly Ebenezer Willowbank. Those controls would cease to have effect. Therefore, the old version of or the current version of the scheme would be the prevailing instrument for development assessment in these areas. The issue with that would be a reduction in the level of control for organics facilities and particularly landfill.
Mm-hmm. What would be the plus side of
the plus side of having the TLPI is that
of not having it? So if council decided to refuse it today?
There's probably very limited positives of refusing it, to be honest, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of Mr Davey? Thank you, Mr Davey.
Thank you.
There are 3 recommendations, and I propose that we move all 3 together, A, B and C. And I'll move recommendations A, B and C. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Fechner. I'll open this up for any discussion. There being no discussion, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous and carried. We move on to item 4, which is the Asset and Infrastructure Services Department Capital Delivery Report for July 2023. Does anyone have any questions for the relevant council officer on this one? No? In that case, I will move that the report on capital delivery by the Asset and Infrastructure Services Department be received and contents noted. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I open up for discussion. I just know it's obviously the first report for the financial year, but I can see that it's tracking well so far. And I do encourage residents to in particular look at attachment 2 to see the update report, which I think is a really good summary with pictures as well as showing a lot of the works that we're doing around our city as well. Any other discussion?
Just a comment,
Councillor.
Mayor. I went to the Ipswich Cycle Park car parking
Yes.
yesterday just to have a look. I know it's not quite open yet,
Yeah.
but it's looking really good, and I thank everybody for the work
thank you.
that they've done there.
Down at Briggs Road. No, thank
Yeah.
you. Any other discussion? I'll put this report to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous and carried. We move to item 5, which is the exercise of delegation report. Does anyone have any questions of the relevant council officer on this? No? In that case, I move that the exercise of delegation report for the period 26th of July 2023 to the 17th of August 2023 be received and the contents noted. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Kunzelman. Any discussion? No, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous and carried. We now move to item 6, which is the Planning Environment Court Action Status Report. Does anyone have any questions of the relevant council officer on this one? No? In that case, I'll move that the Planning Environment Court Action Status Report be received and the contents noted. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Doyle? I'll open it for any discussion. No discussion. Put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous and carried. We'll now move on to item 7. Item 7 is the development application recommendation for minor change, 10301/2019/MAMC/B. May I ask the relevant council officer to come to the lectern, please?
Good morning, Mayor and Councillors. Anthony Bowles, Acting Development Planning Manager.
Thank you, Mr Bowles. Just in reading this, and I appreciate this was a late report, so it came, I think, on Friday, is that correct? And obviously council's assessing itself.
That's right.
So do you mind just briefly outlining the process that council goes through to assess itself?
Yes, sure. So there are a few additional processes that we carry out. So the main change, I suppose, is the independent decision review panel process. So we have a procedure that allows for the panel to occur. The circumstances which the panel convene can vary depending on the circumstances that require it. Two main scenarios are if there's a significant development application receiving a large number of submissions, which isn't the case here. The other scenario is if it's an application that council has lodged to itself. And the panel operation provides an independent review of the recommendation and the process of the assessment to give additional probity into the process and some certainty about following the due process under the Planning Act. The other aspect of the assessment process that is different is that all applications lodged by council to itself are determined by council rather than through delegation. So there's another level of scrutiny available at that point, so it's much more transparent.
Thank you, Mr Bowles. I'm just looking at page 7 of the report, which just talks about the proposal, and it talks about specifically the applicant seeks council's approval for the following changes. I understood all of them and was supportive, except for the first one. It says modification of Nicholas Street entry facade to widen the proposed northern entry. I was trying to work out where that northern entry is, because when you look at the map, I thought it was more the eastern entry when I looked at the map, not northern.
I'll have to have a look at the plans.
If you look at, yeah, page 6 and 7.
So Nicholas Street down there. I suppose it's looking at it's one of those rare plans that we have where the north is pointing east. That might be a typo, but it is the reference is made to the Nicholas Street mall entrance down here. So yeah,
It's the Nicholas Street Mall side that's being,
yes, that's correct.
okay, thank you. I also note in that dot list of the main points, it talks about an integration of a number of bin servicing and fire evacuation corridors to suit the proposed layout, including additional fire evacuation doors in the northern elevation. I guess, is this making it safer, and where do we get our advice from to make sure that is a safer?
A lot of those requirements are things that would come about through the detailed building design for the building approval itself. Its purpose would be more to ensure compliance with the Building Act, and while it would make it safer, it wouldn't necessarily make it any more safer than required to be under the code. So normally what happens is when, with the development approval, we generally look at it at a fairly broad level. The details of the architectural design aren't as to the level of detail that they have all the building code requirements necessarily in there. We normally look at big blobs of GFA, so we know what uses are going in there. So what normally happens is you go to another level of design, you start integrating building code requirements, and you need to make changes to over the overall design. So fairly common practice for us.
And just the last point, it says reduction in the size of the glass portion of the roof above the atrium. May I ask why the glass is changing in size?
When it isn't a building code design change, it is normally a preference of the customer to make changes to architectural details. So it may be an aesthetic choice made by the designer.
Okay.
So not too concerned about it personally from a planning perspective. If it isn't impacting on the GFA and things like infrastructure contributions or the effect of it, the compliance of the proposal to the planning scheme, those sort of architectural details are generally acceptable, and we don't typically go into the detail of why. It would normally be a customer preference.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions of Mr. Bowles? No? Thank you, Mr. Bowles.
Thank you.
So I just wouldn't mind asking someone about why is the glass portion reducing? I'm not sure who the best person is to speak to.
Thank you, sorry if
or
I
yourself?
may,
Oh, yes,
Chair.
yes,
And I'm not sure if Mr. Hepburn is here or someone else from the team, but I believe it's driven by costs.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we were
Okay.
we
Bigger,
had
smaller
a
glass.
number of glass skylights or atrium, whatever you want to call it, and
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
I just do have one question. Will this come back under the Ipswich development for costing, or we approve this, it's just going to go through without us knowing what it's going to cost us?
No, all of the costs will go through the other relevant committee, the Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee, and then ultimately through to council. So that will be very clear and put to you. And just to clarify, the glass changing in size is certainly costs is the key factor, but also a bit of control of light and aesthetics as well, just amending the design. Thank you.
So managing the hot Queensland sun.
Yeah.
As well. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions of council officers? No. In that case, I move recommendation A. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Doyle. I now open up for any discussion. There being no discussion, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. So I can see it's unanimous in the room except for Councillor Ireland. Those against? Those abstaining? Thank you, Councillor Ireland has abstained. Thank you very much, and the matter has passed. Thank you. We move on to add to notice of motion, and there are none. There are no matters arising. There are no procedural motions and matters. So I'll close this meeting now at 9:10.
Excuse me, Mayor. Ask for my to miss a meeting next month. Could I put my application in now?
Well, that would
Or
have to
the
go
full
to, I think, the
council.
ordinary council meeting.
Okay.
So I'll call it 9:20. And the next meeting, which is the Governance and Transparency Committee, will start at 9:30. Thank you.